G'day everyone, welcome to another video by myself, Andrew DFT. And of course today's video is about the tutorial that you have been waiting quite some time for. This is the tactical shotgun tutorial from Fortnite. So of course I produced this guy here. Now this was made out of styrofoam quite some time ago and a lot of you really liked it, and of course you wanted to produce it yourself. So I had to go and make a tutorial out of EVA foam because that is the main material that a lot of you guys have access to rather than styrofoam. Now that was something I dreaded, as I know EVA foam is good for props, but when you've got something like this which requires a lot of layers, a lot of detail, it can be quite daunting to actually complete. So this tutorial took me a lot of time. It actually took me about 5 days to produce and film and then go ahead and do all the editing and audio afterwards. So hopefully you guys like it and enjoy it. It will be requiring you to have a lot of skill and patience. It is a lot more difficult than say the Scar. But this is it in its final creation. So this is what you should achieve by the end of this tutorial. It is in its basic standard EVA foam. It will use some PVC pipe or wooden dowel or cardboard tube, whatever you prefer for the main connecting points. But of course when you go paint it up, you should have a lovely nice prop ready to go for your cosplay or your short film. It does look pretty good, to be honest. This actually looks almost 90% or 99% as good as the styrofoam one. But the differences are, well, not too different. I mean, each material provides its own strength. This one you can get far higher quality detail, it's easier to carve. This thing gives you a much durable prop, so it's better for short films, you won't have to worry about breaking it, but it's harder to achieve that level of detail compared to the styrofoam. So they both have their benefits, but for the most part, they look great. So we'll jump in and get started. Remember, you can get the templates free in the PDF in the description box below. Download that and we'll jump in. And of course, if you want to build the Scar, which is this guy here, this is an EVA foam tutorial as well. You can also find a link for that at the end of this video. But for now, the tactical shotgun. Alright, so first things first, we'll go ahead and print off the templates. Of course, grabbing them in the description box below. Once they're printed off, we can start to assemble them. To do that, you're going to simply use some masking tape or sellotape, whatever you prefer. Then we're going to go ahead and actually break apart this template to ensure that what we're putting on the foam is of course what we want. Now we're going to start off with the main bulk of the gun, so you just need to follow the steps I'm taking here, matching the images to yours and cutting out all the individual segments. Now you will notice that it fits nicely. I've designed it so that it should fit on the basic standard foam tile floor mats, and you want to cut off this lip at the beginning here. I actually left it on when I did my first trace and then noticed it needed to come off, so go ahead and clip that off and then do the tracing. Now you want to make sure you've got two of one side and one of the other, which means you just need to flip the template so that we have 3 layers of this foam, 2 of one and 1 of the other. Then of course you can see me going ahead and cutting the foam out. We want to have nice sharp cuts on a 90-degree angle to ensure that everything is straight down, it's all cut out clean, and that way it should match and bind together perfectly. To bind it together, you can simply use hot glue or contact cement. If you're using contact cement, I advise watching this whole video through before you actually go ahead and follow it, because I am going to make a few mistakes that I realized should have been done earlier. If you use contact cement, you might be a bit stuffed, but because I'm using hot glue, I'm easily able to repair that and fix it later on. But please, if you're going to use barge or contact cement, watch this whole video first. That way you can address where I'm making mistakes and ensure you don't copy them. Now you will notice when you are binding these all together that you do have some inconsistencies in the layers. That's fine, just address where they are, then go back with a nice sharp craft blade and simply trim those down. If you're using a rotary tool, go back and sand those down. It depends on what you have, but a simple craft blade with a nice sharp edge should be able to clean those out and make them all flush, no problem. Next we'll move on to the handle part. Now this is going to sit a bit higher than of course the previous 3 layers. So what we're going to do is we're going to make 4. You can do 2 of one side and 2 of the other by simply flipping the template. Once we've got them all cut out and you've made them all flush, you can of course glue them all together using the bonding agent of your choice. And what we'll do is we'll of course address where it needs to be for those inconsistencies in the layers. I had quite a few on this piece. Don't worry if you do, because that is just natural. We're not using a machine, therefore we are going to have those inconsistencies quite prominent across all these individual layers. But that's fine, just go ahead and trim them where necessary, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and break apart the template even further to apply the detail on when needed, so that way we can get it all sorted before we actually glue it into the main gun. So we're starting of course with the handle section. Right now it sits at the big blocky part. We don't want that. We want it to be a nice beveled across edge to allow our hand to of course firmly grip this handle section. To do that we'll add in the depth layers and of course the beveled edge guidelines. Now the depth line is going to sit about 3/4 of the way through that top layer of foam. You don't want to go down too far towards the textured side, but what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we change our blades now so that we have a brand new, clean, sharp blade to run straight through this foam and get the nice crisp and clean edging we're looking for. Of course, that looks absolutely smooth. If you have some tearing, if you have some ripping going on, that means your blade isn't sharp enough or you haven't replaced it yet. But I highly recommend ensuring for all the highly detailed points, and I will address them and let you know when you need them, that your blade is 100% sharp. Otherwise, the gun isn't going to look as good as possible, which ideally we want. So of course, we're continuing now, and we'll do the bottom section on the left here. Now simply cut that piece out. We'll apply the horizontal line where it's needed, and of course add that depth line in as well. I'm going to add it in about 3/4 of the way through that top layer of foam, pretty much just like we did on the previous handle piece. And we'll go take that nice sharp craft blade. It should still be just as sharp as it was before. It doesn't dull out that fast, so we can go take it to that edge and get the nice bevel that's required. Now we do have this little piece, of course, up here. We want to make sure that this is, of course, laid in, but rather than beveling it, we're just simply going to use the scoring technique. For those of you who aren't familiar with the scoring technique, it's simply grabbing the blade and breaking the surface of the material. We don't have to cut deep, we just have to cut enough that it breaks the skin, so to speak, so when we apply heat later on, it will expand those lines and create a nice piece of detail for us. Now for this section here, which is of course where the shell ejects after the shot has been fired, what we're going to do is we're going to cut into this and actually take it out and reduce it a level to give it the nice 3D appearance we're wanting. Now this is a point that I made a mistake in. Ideally, if you are using contact cement, you would do this before you glue all these layers together. Luckily, I did it out of hot glue, so I can run the blade in on horizontal and actually break apart the hot glue under the segment and pull that piece out. But otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that layer, cut it in half so that way it's half the thickness, and then simply glue it back in, giving us that nice 3D raised point. And of course, you do that on the left and the right side. Then of course, just grab your bonding agent and glue this section right in. It should sit right in the middle, which what you'll notice is that of course the top main bulk of the gun is 3 layers and this handle section is 4. Therefore, it gives it a nice raised side, maybe about 1/4 of an inch thick on both sides, giving us the nice 3D level that we're after. Now you will notice back at the handle section we have this hollow point here. This is of course a part we want to cut out. I didn't notice it until now, so this is another mistake that I made, but of course we're addressing right now. It's not a problem to go through and cut through each layer individually once it's been glued. I do that and it's no problem, but ideally this is something I would have done back in the beginning on each individual layer and then glue them together, but that's up to you. As long as you do get it hollow, that's the main point. But of course, whatever's easiest for you, just make sure that this is cut out and just push it free, and then of course clean it up on the interior so that way you have a nice flush looking piece, good to go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and bevel off the back or butt part of this gun. Right now it sits at that vertical 90-degree edge, so what we're going to do is of course add in that bevel line and then a depth line about 3/4 of the way through that top layer of foam. Actually no, let's make it halfway through that top layer of foam. Then of course with a nice sharp craft blade we're going to go ahead and take off this edge, of course making sure it is as smooth as possible. If it is of course tearing or not coming out as nicely as you can see on my one on the screen, then go ahead and please change out the blade. Please don't hesitate to change out the blade. It's a few cents for a blade when of course you're going to get one shot at making this edge as perfect as possible. And of course do it on the little back part at the top here as well. Now what we're going to do is go add another layer, which is much easier than beveling, to this top section, of course, setting up here. So what we're going to do is break apart the template and apply it left and right onto a piece of EVA foam. Go ahead and cut that out as nicely as possible, and then we're going to add in all the bevel lines. Now to do this, we're going to add the bevel lines in the interior and then the depth line about 3/4 of the way through the thickness. Now you will need a nice fresh blade here. Of course you want this to be as perfect as possible, coming off exactly like that. Because this is a centerpiece on the design, this will be prominent, it'll always be seen in a photo. You want it to look as best as possible. Then grab your bonding agent and simply glue it in right there. So that's it for part 1. Hopefully you guys are really following along and you do understand the level and detail that requires to get put into this. It's a lot more intricate than suppose the SCAR was, like I said in the beginning, because we do have all these individual layers which we want to create as additional layers, but that does require us to carve the foam and really use some blade techniques which we haven't really seen before. So as long as you take your time, you watch your hands, make sure the blade doesn't cut you and only cuts the foam, we should get the result we're looking for. But for now, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into part 2. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, if you want to start the sky, you can do that as well at the link next. So until then, catch you later.